Now, it's a question of dividing it up and saying, look, some areas
I have
will...
a comeback on that.
Please.
Let's go to Mombasa and speak to Solomon. Good morning, Solomon.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Yeah, we are doing fine.
Do you agree with the city's idea of a turnaround team for employment creation?
When it comes to employment, hello, I have an opinion.
Yes.
First of all, for the government, that is national and county government, and the one is for the unemployed. Let me start with the government and the county government. We should have a policy where, all these manufacturing firms should be at their rightful places. One, if you go to Nyandarua County, that is where we grow a lot of potatoes.
Yeah.
But you find the Crips company, they are located in Nairobi. That is one. Another scenario that I'm familiar with, Mombasa, we have 4 milling companies. Mombasa doesn't grow maize. Either the coastal town doesn't grow maize. So maize comes from Rift Valley, transport costs, get milled, then go back to the same places for distribution and consumption.
Or it comes from abroad via the port, it gets milled, and then it's distributed around the coasts.
Yeah. Not like, for example, like Ajab is all over Kenya, but the milling companies in Mombasa. So you find there's a lot of cost involved from the farmer to the factory. So, for example, Kalenjins grow a lot of maize. Why don't they have their own milling there? So, if, for example, if a government have a policy, if, for example, a certain crop is grown in a certain area, those factories associated with those crops must be situated in those areas so as to provide efficiency. That is one. That is when it comes to milling manufacturing. Then, secondly, for the unemployed, and this is a very critical thing. The unemployed people, us as youth between 25 to 35, first of all, we are very choosy in the jobs that are there available. Two, technology is replacing manpower. That's something we should accept. Then thirdly, all the graduates that went to campus and college, there's a unit they did is called critical and creative thinking. So I don't know if these people, are they creative in making jobs? That is one. Two, are they, the little money that they get in their small households, do they save this money to enhance their business, or do they go on a drinking spree?
Okay.
So as much as the government is wasteful, even us, we are the most wasteful people. So you find the little penny that we get for maybe to advance when it comes to our livelihoods, we waste it as well. So that's why we find unemployment is. But the most key is us as youth. If I'm a graduate of accountant, I just want to do accounting. Yes, my farm at home, maybe for example, we have 10 cows, but I cannot do something. How can I make these 10 cows to be 50 cows?
I get your point, Solomon. Thank you very much for your contribution. Derito Ashira, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm very fine, thank you.
A turnaround team, yes or no?
Yes.
Do you support the idea of a turnaround team for employment creation?
Now, I have a point to make on this particular issue. And I'm just going to say what there is something that the Senator for Kiambu has been saying for a long time. That if you do not invest in manufacturing, our country will just go down, just like what we have been experiencing for the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
That our people must be held accountable for, our leaders must be held accountable for the lack of investment in manufacturing.
So how do you suppose we go about that, Derito?
We have to support our young people by investing in industries. In fact, there is nothing that can make our economy grow more than investing in manufacturing. I think that is enough.
So employment creation for you see the best route for employment creation being manufacturing. Thank you very much, Derito Ashira. That's what he has to say on that.
You see, as I was saying before the callers came in, you asked me to give you a checklist, and I was in the process.
I asked you to tell me what you expect to see the task force doing.
That is a checklist.
Not necessarily a checklist of,
no, it is a checklist.
I want a plan. And then
it is a checklist. One of the things that we have done well is try to stem corruption and stem leakages. But the one thing that we haven't done well is encourage intra-regional trade or inter-regional cooperations. Remember, the SGR was inaugurated by 3 presidents. It wasn't just us. It was supposed to serve the greater region. Goalposts changed. But if we grow trade and we have it within, whether it's DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, what you're doing is these sectors we speak of grow when we are trading with other people at a greater level than we currently are. Then this issue of employment then takes another leap. Our own industries grow because of this trading. And we have a huge advantage here. We're ahead of many of our neighbors when it comes to these things.
Okay. So once we'll take a look at traffic, we'll come back and hear what you expect to see the task force to do. Because we'd like to see deliverables, completely measurable deliverables. As you tell me, this now I can see is what the government is doing to create employment for the youth. Unlike before when I couldn't. It's 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice up your life.
Right, there's some showers in parts of the city of Nairobi right now, so please observe speed limits and try to be as cautious as possible. Mombasa Road was so clear and then traffic happened. Nothing seems to be moving in some parts of Mombasa Road, but of course other areas not so bad. It's a good Thursday morning, as you would say. We have the usual jam on Thika Road. Cops or policemen at the Bunyala roundabout serving it up to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout and then out through towards the city centre. Not so bad. Mwiki to Kasarani, of course, we know is completely worn out. 10-minute drive will take you 1 hour now, unfortunately, and that now is an off-feed of traffic onto the Greater Thika Road. So there's where we have the major problems that we have this morning. Looking into Mombasa City, or yes, Moy Avenue, there is some traffic there this morning, but things in Kisumu look absolutely clear all the way from middle of town straight through to the airport and beyond. Not much of an issue there. 0719 012 600 is the number to call in case you see something we should know about. Let us know and we'll share.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
At 2 minutes past 8 o'clock, good morning and thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room right here on Spice FM. In Nairobi, we are on 94.4. We are in Mombasa, 87.9. In Kisumu, 102.5. Nakuru, 96.0. 96.7 in Eldoret. Nyeri, 90.9. Malindi, 97.7. We live stream this show on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We also live stream on YouTube, Spice FM KE. We're also live streaming on Twitter. Spice FM KE is our Twitter handle. And also you can join the conversation via the hashtag The Situation Room. This hour we are discussing unemployment in Kenya. Of course, unemployment has been discussed over and over and over again by successive governments, and the issue of providing employment for the youth sometimes has been misconstrued to mean that the government is employing people. But also, there's the other angle of the other side of the story is that the government should be providing a conducive environment so that the private sector can thrive and thereby create job employment or job opportunities for many of the Kenya's population. Now, C.T. Muga today is saying we have seen talk, we have seen efforts here and there, uncoordinated at best. We need what you're calling a turnaround team to ensure that we get some tangible movement towards the direction of having job creation.
Let me just say this at the onset. I am not providing solutions. I'm actually not even qualified to provide solutions. What I'm qualified to do is make suggestions. and suggestions based on what already exists. The country has experts in literally every field you can think of, and these are people who know exactly what to do and when to do it. To understand this, one could argue we have an oversupply of experts. We export them to other countries, international bodies. We have experts. It's not that we don't have them. It's not that we don't have people who know. We do have them. The issue is that this ability. Now, I was talking about creating intra-regional trade, and I was talking about being able to expand the very things that we're saying, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's agriculture. If you have as a fundamental point of departure, a policy that ensures that the trade with your neighbors grows, it's not difficult to see what that means. Your industries will grow.
Right.
Your farm inputs will grow. And with the growth comes employment, because you will need more and more manpower to ensure that these things are manned. You may even get to export some of that manpower to these neighboring countries to ensure that these things get done. You know, I once traveled to Mbarara in Uganda sometimes back we had some research projects there. And one of the things that I found interesting, two things. Well, there are many wonderful things I saw there. One, the tea they drink there, the milk isn't watered. There is no water in that milk. It's just milk. And then you put tea leaves.
Put some tea.
That's it. It tastes so fine, you actually don't need to put sugar. But I found a KCB bank, I found Equity, and then I found Nakumat.
Kenyan brands.
Yes. Barara, it's not around the corner. No. And I looked and I said, goodness. And they were functional. Nakumat has folded, Equity is still there, KCB is still there. What am I saying? This is what happens when you have good relations with your neighbors and you expand and you have a product that even your neighbors consider to be useful, so they actually take it in. But even prior to that, what I found in East and Central Africa here, when I traveled, was you'd go to a shop thinking that you'd find goods from outside. You look at this is very good, and you're told it's made in Kenya, and you'd say it's here.
Made where?
It's ours.
So I thought I was going to get something which isn't manufactured even in that country or another one. And I was looking at Kenyan goods. And this was the era when President Moi was in power. So manufacturing was actually functioning. It wasn't dead. It was actually growing.
Yep.
Now, if we build from that way, we already had a head start. Not by talking about it. This unit we speak of.
So the PDU is one.
Let the PDU reinvent itself.
There's
because
another
it
one.
already
In
exists.
fact, here's another one. In 2016, the Senator for Nairobi, Johnson Sakaja, sponsored a bill when he was still a member of parliament. Sponsored a bill in the National Assembly. And out of it came the creation of the National Employment Authority. This transformed the National Employment Board into authority.
Yes.
You see those things that you're talking about? For example, creating a database of all qualified people in Kenya
in the country.
and their skills. Getting this data from the universities. It's mandated to do that.
Has it done it?
It's starting to do that. Actually, it's already
Has
open.
it done it from 2016?
They came into effect in 2017. So they've opened the portal. Now people have been feeding their information. If you require, for example, the way the Jubilee government said, after we are re-elected, if you guys give us votes, we'll ensure that all our university students get access to internships and they'll be paid 10,000 shillings. Remember that? So this is one that's supposed to facilitate that, because it'll have the database, and all you need to do is go into that database and say, I need an electrician, I need a camera person, I need somebody who's a sound engineer. How can I get people who have actually trained as sound engineers? Pick one, call them in for an interview.
Has it
If you
been
find them
cascaded to
qualified,
the counties?
it's work in progress. It's work in progress. All right. So the body exists.
How long
that
do they
has this
think
data,
it will take before
that has
they
this
have all that data?
So now what you're talking about is, remember, they just got their first chairman there the other day, and then this
Actually,
chairperson, the case is in court because
we're not talking
it
of
was
cross
rejected.
purposes here. I'm actually
Leadership.
agreeing with you. I am saying
Leadership has
I am
yet to be
saying
crystallized.
this unit would fast track such things. You know what I mean? If we know, again, let me go back to factory settings. I said most of the things I'm discussing, we have. It's
They
just that
exist.
they exist. You may not call it a turnaround team, but it exists.
It's a slow movement of things.
No, this one is not slow moving. It's
It's
stagnant.
backward moving even.
Yes,
at
at
this
best
point.
it's stagnant.
It's moving.
Eric,
It's collecting data.
No, Eric,
The
Eric,
first thing
Eric,
that
the
they need to
data
do
exists.
is-
What do you mean? It exists.
Collating.
People leave universities every single year. We know the
It's
students.
there.
We know them.
Collating data.
Collating how exactly?
Putting the data together.
You know, if you say that is at the stage at which it is, it can be that stage eternally.
It
And
happens
it
every
will
day.
always be that we're collecting.
And
We're
then
collecting
now,
because people, like he says,
if-
are continuing to graduate. So with that which you have, what it seems that there's a problem between putting the key in the ignition, stepping on the gas, and actually moving forward. We seem to be revving the engine always, revving,
You know, the
revving.
way
We need to
the
move.
way CT tells us, even if it's the toe growing,
It's
there's
movement. Yes.
This is movement. And you know what comes out of such an employment authority, for instance, the way we talk about exporting our human resource, because what we agree is we have good human resource. We need to even start thinking of how we can export our human resource.
We
This
already
is
exported,
this
by the
is
way.
a body that
And
now
it's not that the
coordinates,
Eric,
perfectly coordinates this.
it's not that the
looks for
government does anything
opportunities
about it,
for
eh?
Kenyans and
Yes.
goes and places them there.
Kenyans look for those opportunities themselves.
That's
Now
the
this
thing.
is-
The
now-
government doesn't facilitate
Now
that.
this is
People
one.
actually
This
go
is
out and
one
look
that
for
also
it.
facilitates. No, the government does.
Eric,
when
we're not-
teachers went to work in South Sudan, that was the government. Or when
Yes.
police officers went to train the Somali police officers, that was the government. When Colonel Oguna was working in Rwanda, that was the government.
Eric, it's not that the
This government
government
works.
is doing
Yeah,
nothing.
I'm trying to show you.
Why you
government
hear,
is working.
why you hear a tone of urgency in my tone is this. We have a huge problem as a country if our young people get into a state of hopelessness where they cannot see the future and they cannot expect to see anything. Now, the absence of any encouragement as to the availability of jobs or the possibility, yes, job platforms, very useful. It has to be a little more than that. It has to be actual. That's why I asked, has it been cascaded into the
To the county level.
so that the counties can say, we, the county of XYZ,
Have worked with.
yes, and we need blah, 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 blah. The same portal, okay? We are inviting blah, blah. Within the region, you start with your own region. Don't look elsewhere. People who come from this region and have this and this and this is what we plan to do. If you don't cascade it, then people will persist in that state of feeling nothing is happening. You do not want this large population of individuals feeling
as though feeling
Yes.
that way.
You-
Feeling that way. You
do
don't.
not want that. You don't.
Because
Not as a
unfortunately, you will
country,
not be
don't.
able to control what they would or would not do, because then it all translates into other things, whereby now you have heightened levels of crime, you have heightened levels of people behaving in a certain type of way, and you don't want them to go that direction. And so when you have something like this, people, like I said, you're revving the engine. You want to be able to move forward. And the people who want to move forward are those who don't have these jobs. And finally, they see something that has come through that would then be able to help them. What you want to do is act with some level of expediency.
You know, it
Move
may
it along
not.
quicker.
17th of May 2019 is when this authority was launched. It's less than a year old. Already they've opened up the portal where they're gathering information on all job
Eric,
workers. In fact, even UCT, go into the portal and put your qualifications. You could be placed as an ambassador to South Korea.
That will never happen.
We don't have one there.
Hell will freeze over. That will not happen. I had to enter my name in a portal and then
something pops up.
Won't happen. Won't happen. I'll be disqualified.
Right.
Too old. Youth employment guy. This youth employment. You don't qualify as youth, Eric. Ndu is the only person who can qualify as youth. Sorry. No, youth. Focus.
So the formation of a task force, yes, I see. Anyway, on a serious note, I see the point of formation of a turnaround team, and the turnaround team, of course, I think is just giving the mandate to the PDU.
Actually,
And tell the PDU, Zioka Waitas, look, this is what we need you to do in terms of ensuring that we increase the implementation, for example, the Employment Authority, the coordination between Employment Authority and ensuring that the youth are getting, first of all, those internships. on skill, on the apprenticeship is a very important thing in building your skills.
Right.
Ensuring that this works, then coordinating with the private sector and saying that you, private sector, come and get your interns from here, or even start employing people from this kind of pool of people. This will work. And it's empowering that and telling them, look, in fact, I'm creating now under PDU, I'm creating a special unit called Youth Employment, and it shall be headed by Nduoko. Here, Ndu, this is the job that you have. Report to Nzioka reports to the president.
I think,
job gets
I
done.
think it is at that point that we have the problem, whereby
We have too many people.
exactly.
don't need
it.
that-
We don't need that number of
No, you
people to
don't.
get this one thing done.
You don't. You
So we
don't.
have so many cooks spoiling this broth that could feed people, and let's go. We move on to the next meal.
Eric, make
That's
it an
the problem.
independent unit so that the answer only to one person.
One person. If you do
Meaning-
your job, move on
Goes
to
to
the
the
next.
top.
Yes, it's an
Yes.
office genuinely answerable to the top. So we know exactly who to blame. Since we like blaming people anyway, we have a beautiful opportunity to add one more to the list.
And you
so
know,
we
even
know.
if you want to ascribe unto, for example, the president as the chief executive, if you want to ascribe unto him everything that we would in terms of respect and all, I do believe there are some moments when he would sit in his corner and shake his head and really think, my goodness, the people that I have appointed to do certain things actually not doing what it is that I can't go back to the people of Kenya and tell them this. So he tries to fight these battles, on his own. However, I think at some point he really does wonder why it is that we have so many people in this one whirlwind, and it just keeps going round and round and round. And he sees these numbers. I don't think as an individual he looks at these numbers and he's happy with them, especially with the fact that he's appointed people to do the job. But again, then where his hands are tied in being able to say, okay, get out of here, or let's do our job. Really, which one? So I think he also does get frustrated when he sees the numbers and tries to understand.
A plan is not very useful if the people to whom it applies don't understand it and cannot action it. Yes, and it also is completely relevant if it isn't cascaded to the counties, because that's where people reside now. That's where people go back to now. It's not as though everybody comes to Nairobi or Mombasa or Nakuru or Kisumu. Everybody has their county. And counties employ because they are governments. And counties can replicate the very, very same thing that the national government. When Solomon said something very important, the need to ensure that you place industry where it's actually most efficacious. It's like having, say, the fishing industry centered, say, in Wajir. How is that going to work?
It doesn't help, huh?
No.
The other day, actually, I was driving down Eldoret Road and I saw the National Irrigation Board office. And I asked myself, why are they here? Then the other question is, where should they be? So I looked at how many irrigation schemes do we have around the country. They're all over the country.
Yes, they are.
So where would you take them? If you took the National Irrigation Board to Golana Kulalu, what happens to the guys who did the National Irrigation Board services in Baringo County?
Remember, a lot of the things we have were a carryover from a central system where everything happened in Nairobi. And if it was Nairobi, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Remember?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with having a National Irrigation Board office in Nairobi. Absolutely nothing. Because it falls under the Ministry of Water. We call it water. Is it water development?
What's the irrigation service?
No.
It's agriculture.
That one.
It's under agriculture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the truth of the matter is we still have national government and we still have ministers and we still have ministries. We do. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but the replication of it, you cannot tell me that there
You should
is
have
any part
offices
of this
on the
country,
ground.
yes, where there's no part of this country that does not require irrigation. None. You cannot tell me this area doesn't require irrigation. They all do. I was looking at our screen here, and Zimbabwe are facing a famine. And this is after they've had rains such as ours.
Yeah.
And theirs is still going on. We sometimes forget that rains can also cause famine, as can drought. Now, when you have youth who have been mobilized and youth who understand functions, when you have these sort of crises, these things that we talk about, this is a time when the youth can actually be put to good use. Because one, if it's a problem in the area, they know the area better than any government official who's going to come there. So if you talk about the problem, they can actually explain it to you better than anybody else can because they live through it.
Yeah.
Now, if you give such people the opportunity to actually bring about change, this is what this youth ministry tried to do. I saw efforts in some of the things they were trying to do, and I was thinking, if only they could sustain this, they'd go very, very far with this. but they didn't sustain it. It started off, it petered off, and that was the end of that story.
That was it.
That was it.
The conversation continues on our social media platforms. Spice FM KE on Facebook. Join the conversation on Twitter at Spice FM KE, at CT Muga, at Nduoko, at Eric Latif, at Nyeri Thorn. And of course, the hashtag is the Situation Room. It's 18 minutes past 8. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Online, on digital, and on radio. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
In the Situation Room this morning, CT Muga, Eric Latif, and Nduoko. Look, regional
Right,
issues.
let's look regional issues this morning, and let's see what's been happening in the region most recently, and trying to understand that, the people seem to be, again, it's said that, when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. But it seems that as a result of recent edicts or recent necessities having been seen by government, around the country or around countries in East Africa are probably, not probably, but for sure, making citizens think really seriously about the situations within which they find themselves. If we look at Kenya, what we have seen as the Patriotism Act, what would it be called, coming out of Nyeri a few days ago, when it was seen as your patriotic duty to pay this 3% market tax, as it were. And then Nyeri coming out later to say that, yes, you know what, this is actually a patriotic duty. You should find some pride in doing this. And of course, that comes off the backlash of a lot of people saying that we don't know what you've done with it in the past. How can it be then our patriotic duty? Because we don't know what you're going to do with it in the future. So we do not feel proud in paying this. You want to take a step over to Uganda, where certain things have happened over the last few weeks. Most recently, the government then has banned private meetings, and the police can actually come into your house and stop a meeting that is going on, whether it is a prayer meeting, political meeting, or just a party. They can decide that they can stop that by virtue of this government edict. And previously, we've even seen that there have been a tax that has been levied on social media, where it comes into your privacy in terms of what you're then able to stream. You have to pay for that even more. We've seen the disappearance of journalists in Tanzania over and over and over again, with most recently another one 2 weeks ago, and the arrest and jailing of one quite vocal journalist, even after the report that was sent out by the Press Freedom Corps a few months ago. So now we see across the country and across the region very many reasons for why citizens would want to take a step back and actually raise up their voices and say this cannot continue to happen. If anything, what is happening is that revolution is actually being fermented. Dissent is being fermented, and governments have to remember that where they actually are is for the people, and this people-centered consciousness has to come back into the limelight, to understand that you're actually there as leaders for the people, to make sure that you actually, yes, creating a conducive environment where your people can thrive and essentially raise the economic and governance profile of your country. What we've seen in the recent past coming out of 3 countries is that it actually is not happening. If anything, we are going against this. And I am saying this morning that the revolution or the dissent that is being fermented actually needs to be looked at from a people-centered consciousness of what a government is actually supposed to be doing for its people. Right, So certain things coming out of different parts of the countries, here in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania. I mean, and just listening and hearing what it is that many people have said, and given rise to the fact that quite a number of people are not satisfied. They're not okay with the status quo, with the way in which things are going, and saying, look, if anything, what you're doing is pushing us in the other direction. If we would come together and fight for you or fight with you, then you're making it very difficult for us to hold hands together. KRA came out the other day with this 3% tax, which has then been dubbed the patriotism tax, whereby you're saying people in the country were asking you to do this as your patriotic duty to make sure that we can raise money to move this country in a forward direction. However, previously, what has been done with tax in this country has not been very transparent for people to understand this is where your tax is actually going. So it can be seen as to why people wouldn't want to pay this or want to do anything about it. So if you take us again, if you want to move into other countries where we've seen over and over again, opposition has not been able to speak out. In Uganda, for example, anything opposition would do to government or would open its mouth, government basically would try and quell that or shut that down. We've had individuals who speak out against government or want to point out certain things that are happening, being journalists in Uganda disappearing, or even in the public eye being arrested and jailed by virtue of the fact that they opened their mouth to speak against the government of the day. And we're saying if governments are supposed to be people-centered or people-focused and oriented, this is really a pitiful way of showing this.
Do you actually imagine that there's any government in the world that just allows people to say whatever they like, whenever they like, however they want to?
Well, I'm sure. I mean, I think there's some who. If you look at Kenya, for example, a lot of people say a lot of things and get away with it. You don't find them being gagged or arrested and then sent to
here
jail.
we threaten you.
We threaten you and then we talk at you and then nothing is done thereafter. Really,
if only that were the case. Remember, we've had some bizarre instances where lawyers. There's one particular lawyer who was prosecuting a case against administration police. And for his efforts, he ended up dying.
Yep.
It isn't the only case we've heard of in this country. Of course, there are other people who've made an industry out of supposed real and imagined prosecutions or persecutions. But it isn't as though there aren't rogue elements who will ensure that if they do not like what you are saying or they don't like the direction you're taking, that they may decide to end your life. Yes.
As they wish.
As they see fit. But my question was,
not state.
Is there any country on this planet where the government will allow you to simply say anything you want, anytime you want, anyhow?
Absolutely not. And that's why even when it comes to media freedoms, there are media laws in all countries. And the media laws actually govern how even the media communicates. There are laws on communication, on what you can say, where you can say it, how you can broadcast it, and how you can reach a wider audience. What you say in your private room, that's yours. But when it goes to public, when you're communicating to more than one person, it becomes something else that falls in the realms of the law. Those things are allowed. When a government is actually now taking action on whether it considers that journalists are reporting or misreporting, or whether journalists are being unduly influenced by
according to them
external forces, yes, they take you to court, they go through the process. And that's why you have various arms of government. You go through the process. I don't think that should, therefore, we should look at that and see that governments within this region are becoming oppressive and repressive. Not necessarily. They're promoting democracy.
Well, I don't know if it's about becoming oppressive or repressive as opposed to then making it comfortable for citizens to live and flourish in their own country. And I think that is the thing, because then what you do is that you raise the levels of fear, you raise the levels of uncomfortability for citizens to say, oh, okay, then that means I actually can't express myself or I actually can't speak in this way, whereby we are saying that this governance is supposed to be people-led or people-driven. And then if you raise the fears of people, then, you stun them into silence, basically, and they're living in a society whereby they feel they can't say anything. Take a step away from Tanzania, for example, where journalists have been arrested or they disappeared. We don't know where they are, or those who've been convicted as having gone against the grain of the government. Go to Uganda, where the other day they said, even you cannot even have a private meeting in your house. Police can come and arrest you. And we're not kidding. It's there. Daily Monitor. It is there. You cannot have a private meeting in your house. I invite Eric and Sisi to my home. Whatever you're discussing, no. Police will come and arrest you.
It may not be
it's
clear.
Now against the law.
We in this country had a situation similar to that not too long ago. An assembling of people. You are not allowed to have this so-called freedom of assembly as you see it now. You couldn't. Because it would be construed as fermenting malice or fermenting something that was anti-government. There are processes that I think various countries go through, and this has a lot to do with the sort of leadership that they have in what they call they don't think that they are stifling dissent. No, they see they're preventing the citizenry from being unduly influenced by malcontents.
They're holding the country together.
According to them.
Yes.
Right. And then, but also it's not just what you think you're doing, but perception of the very people that you lead is equally as important as that which you are doing.
Okay.
It
Is there
equally
a negative
as important.
perception? Do we have cases of, like growing cases of dissent or negative perception in Tanzania, for instance? Or people feeling that, oh no, this Magufuli guy, we can't wait for his term to end?
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of we can't wait for his time to end, but in terms of the jostling for people to say, okay, if this is the space within which we're supposed to settle into, we don't like it. And it's been documented. People are saying, although the people of Tanzania, in terms of how they speak up, is very different from how Kenyans would speak up, or very different from how Ugandans would speak up, because they're more, I would use the word, passive in nature in terms of how they speak up against dissent. You don't find, I would say, in the region, they would be the quietest of all, being able to take things sitting down. But, there have been rumblings and there have been people saying, and again, here's another indicator, that they won't come out in public. They won't come out in public shouting and talk about the fact that they're not happy with the way in which things are going. They won't do that. But in the quiet covens, they will speak out again and say, actually, you know what? We are seeing the country moving forward. We like that. But then there's certain things that we're not really happy with, this kind of thing. The journalists and their families and their colleagues speak out, well, okay, things might be getting better in terms of how the country is moving, but we didn't expect that we would be stifled or gagged like this. That means, whereas I was able to say something in a certain way before, I am then not allowed to say it anymore. That definitely has a way in which it plays out on people's psyche, and then even being able to do their jobs. When we had the internet tax, as it were, in Uganda, there was uproar, and people said, okay, now I'm having to spend money on something that would otherwise be free. And of course, there were underlying factors with that, is that people, it was seen that the government of the day did not want people discussing amongst themselves in what would then be termed as dissent, because social media definitely was used as a way for people to pass these kind of messages, of course, after having seen how the Arab Spring then
so the government was making it expensive for people to have a conversation.
Definitely, and a conversation that were then moving in political lines. Definitely, that was a sentiment that came through, and it's something that cannot be ignored. And when we have something like that, you impose a tax so that it's more expensive for you to have the discussions, and so it's a deterrent at the same time for you to have the discussion.
If we are going to have conversations like this, then let's all of us let all of us actually benefit from this tax, so that we can take this money and develop the economy.
The same government goes further. You just said if you want to have these conversations, go have them in the privacy of your home. Government has gone into the home now and said even these private meetings you want to have in your home, banned. You cannot. And then run up to an election. I'm not surprised. Soon we'll have another election in Uganda. I'm not surprised that these edicts are coming out now. However, it is a bit worrisome to hear things like this.
I think I look at the regional governments and I see the circumstances under which they operate. Yes, like you said, CT, it's an evolution cycle, depending on the leadership and the circumstances of the day. And I look at Uganda and Tanzania and even Rwanda and going around into Burundi. The governments around the region are basically dealing with what they need to deal with at that point.
They do. Burundi take things a little far. They are genuinely, overtly repressive. It's not this one of Tanzania. There's one journalist, and we don't seem to know his whereabouts. There's a gentleman called Bobby Wine. He's been shoved into jail, and the next day he's out. No, it's not that. Burundi is far more repressive. So it's why I say it is a leadership issue, is because if you were to look at the way the media criticizes the government and the president in this country, if you transported this media to Tanzania, what do you think would happen?
Of course, that's a question.
Just the way the media in Kenya goes about it. Or if I'm saying this to understand, if you took the Kenya media and took it, say, to Uganda, and they function that way. Can you imagine the sort of dust that would be raised?
It would definitely be more than a dust
but
storm.
remember, we have evolved.
It's over time.
It's over time.
I mean, the way the media operates in Kenya now definitely is not the way it was operating 20 years ago.
And the government has realized that the media isn't trying to foment revolt. No. If you make the mistake, they'll tell you, you've done this. All they're doing is reporting it. They're saying, this is what you seem to have done. This is what you seem to have said. This is what you seem to have promised, but you haven't fulfilled. That's all they're doing.
And the government has also evolved. It has also learned to insulate itself from all that talk. So you guys in the media talk. At the end, tomorrow, mutafunga nyama, and we continue. We operate.
Or we call you and we talk. And we tell you, okay, this is our side of the story.
We've heard you.
Yes.
This is it. See? 26 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, let's take a look at how things may have changed or essentially remained the same. Yes, definitely some showers in the city this morning that's causing a bit of traffic regardless of where it is that you are. All right, Kariobangi Outer Ring Road, the flow is okay. Coming onto Jogo Road and getting into the city centre, not so bad as you try to traverse the City Stadium roundabout. The sad state of the Kasarani Mwiki Road, of course, is causing some major problems this morning. Roadworks are said to have begun, but no, it's not happening. Eastern Bypass towards the GSU is stuck. Nobody's able to move there. There's a section that's clear that indicates the turn towards Muthaiga Road, but unfortunately, it's been blocked with some unnecessary obstruction this morning. Yes, everybody's complaining about the Eastern Bypass towards Embakasi stuck. Nobody's moving this morning. Driving on Wayaki Way is a bit difficult today because there's quite some traffic. So everywhere you look, traffic has poured on quite a lot. Let's see what it looks like in a short while. But for now, you're going to have to wait it out, folks. We'll give you some updates in a short while. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. We'll let you know in a short while.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
Right, so we're looking at what could then be termed as the fermentation, all right, fermenting descent or fermenting revolution around different parts of the region with certain things or certain edicts that have been then put out by the government of the day. And we're not saying that just because of that people are just going to be up in arms and run into the street, but then what happens is that you create an attitude in the minds of people in terms of what my government is actually doing for me and what I would have hoped my government would have done, been able to do for me. Now, of course, like you said, CT, previously, if you're going to take one aspect, like the media, for example, and take it into another country, it would be terrible in terms of what would come out. Or if you take the people that you have, for example, the disposition of the people of Kenya and move them to Tanzania where this is happening, of course, there would be major uproar. There would be people who would be speaking about this and saying, no, we cannot have this kind of thing happening. And people would not be afraid to say it. People would not be afraid to speak out. But by the very nature of the fact that you have certain people in certain countries not being able to say anything, then you know that, yeah, to a certain extent, people have been suppressed.
You're making it sound like there's absolute zero freedom of expression in Tanzania and Uganda, for instance. But there is expression. In fact, if you look at the number of newspapers that Tanzania has, there's so many dailies.
Even Uganda, for that matter.
There are so many dailies. Some publications that are what you would actually wonder, how would you sell such a publication on Kenyan streets?
It's interesting that you say that because
on
yes,
the streets of Kampala.
Even in Uganda,
you can say at the end of the day, from the Monitor to the Daily Monitor to Red Pepper, etc., they say whatever they want to say, but at the end of the day, what the government wants to do, it does. That's what I'm saying. It's whatever they want to do, it does. Just like now we talk about this ban on private meetings. There will be uproar. People will talk, they'll sing, they'll shout, they'll dance. The ban is still there. as terrible as it sounds,
by the way,
it is
people
still
will
going to be
meet.
there. And
This is-
people
that's
will
the
still
thing.
meet and they will be arrested.
There's a target. There are particular people who are being targeted, and there's a reason for that.
Which
Of
is-
course, intelligence may be working on the fact that certain political leaders have been having certain political meetings and saying, no, we are meeting in a private residence. This is not a public space, so you can't come and tell us anything that you'd like to tell us, that to arrest us. So this is one government basically just reacting to some of these things. It doesn't mean that anybody now who meets over Christmas, when people are going home and having and slaughtering goats in Uganda, that people are getting arrested for that. No, or they'd even be arrested this weekend if people met. It doesn't mean that.
But it was
Festivals, music festivals.
You understand that at the
festivals
same
happen
time,
in
the
Uganda.
opposition, or what was said to be the opposition, now even when they're given licenses or the okay to have meetings in public areas, something happens just before the meeting is to take place, and they get arrested. Okay, now a lot of these groups then resort to having these meetings privately, and even that then is cut off. So what is it? What is this terrible thing that is being said at these meetings? If you're saying that it's okay, it's open democracy, let people do what they want, let the opposition be vibrant, why then do you not want them to meet to the point whereby you will ban these meetings privately as well?
It isn't quite that. This space that people call freedom is something that has to be fought for. It's never given. And remember that whenever you hear of reporting of, say, the media being interfered with, the media, ask yourself the question Eric was asking. How many media houses are there in a place like Uganda and Tanzania? Of this lot, how many of them have faced the wrath of the government? We seem to assume that these governments are rogue governments that are actually stifling the words of people or the voices of people who mean well. It may not necessarily be the case. We do not know. Apart from the reasons that we may read about, do we really know what else these people who are always targeted, do we know what else they do?
There are other activities.
Yes, do we actually have the full picture? I'm saying sometimes we don't. Sometimes we think that this person or these individuals present themselves in this light, and yet they're not. There was a time in this country when 800 NGOs were stopped from 8. Many of them were working in the northern part of the country. And many of them were involved in financial transactions for helping children, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the mandate was on paper was really very good. Some of them ended up being shut down completely because what they said they were doing and what they were doing was found not to be in agreement. But the way some of these things were reported, the government is stifling. The government is against.
Civil society
The
and
government
NGOs.
isn't always as demonic as they are presented. And sometimes there are things they cannot talk about in public and tell this is what we're doing. But they do know. For instance, do you think they're going to tell the public every time they foil a terrorist attack? They won't.
Of course
Of
not.
course not.
Or even given the full details on saying this
They will
particular
not.
NGO, this is what we found, this is what they were doing.
They
Maybe
won't.
not. They may just stop you now, but they're continuing their other investigations.
How
their
harmful?
sources
How
of funds.
harmful? You want to ask yourself, how harmful then are opposition rallies when people come together to have a discussion about what it is that they want to do, what they want to provide, if being given an opportunity to speak to
If it's
groups?
obvious you're not going to be allowed that space, then you fight for it. It's not complicated.
You push for it.
Of course, that's the thing,
And they
this
should,
this
let them push for it.
They should be allowed to push for it, and the pushing for that comes in then wanting to have, these spaces where they speak. And now, even when that is shut down, of course, you can see where the
Allow me
problem
to
lies.
explain something which is I've considered a bit of anomaly with these things. Some of our great leaders in this region were revolutionaries in their time. They brought about change. And some are even known to have said they really wondered why it is people wanted to be presidents for life. Some of them are now presidents for life.
Of course.
So, is it that they were wrong? Or is it that they had not understood what the presidency entails? What is it that they foresaw?
It's because of what they have had to deal with. So in the initial stages of their presidency, for example, they were dealing with the LRA, they were dealing with all this, they're trying to bring the country together. Now they're trying to see how can I leave this country? And looking at the kind of alternatives that are presenting themselves. If you see that the country is
Leave
not
this
ready,
country or
if
allow
these
this country
guys-
to remain. Yeah.
If these guys are the ones I'm going to leave this country in the hands of,
we have a
no,
problem.
We'll have a problem. Same thing Angela Merkel did when she vied for a new term in Germany. She looked at it and she
Said
saw
no.
the kind of people that are coming out, the kind
These
of
ones.
rhetoric that they have. If I don't vie, these are the people who are going to win. No.
They're going to mess up the
Same
country.
thing. If Germany can can actually come back and elect the same leader, because she said, look, guys, I think I ought to come back because this country is not ready. These are the kind of people who are presenting themselves as the alternatives.
Alternative leaders,
It's the
yes.
same thing that Yoweri Museveni, for example, would do in Uganda.
Right. So
Look
in
and see-
Germany, for example, with Angela Merkel, did we see that there was a contestation of the at such great heights that we did in Uganda, that there was a contestation of elections, for example, or that there were claims of election malpractice. Even when she came out and said, for example, I think I am the one who's going to be able to take it forward, the people of Germany seem to agree with what she said. Now, in Uganda, when the election was
Some
held,
did,
did
some
we
didn't.
hear?
There was a hung parliament.
Did we hear about election malpractice, for example? Did we hear about stolen votes? Did we hear about the stifling of? Did we hear about the stifling of the opposition, for example? Did we hear about such things?
No, we
You have to
didn't.
take all those things into consideration when we're going to make these. When we're going to draw these parallels.
No, we didn't. Because also it's a developed economy, a developed democracy.
So there's
In
no
our case,
corruption,
where
right?
it's developing,
It's fairly developed.
In ours, where it's a developing, kind of democracy, there are all these things at play as well. How
like
many,
rigging of elections.
You may
No.
call it rigging of elections. You may also somebody else.
Start with tribalism.
Yes.
Let's just start there, then
that
and then
point.
move forward. Yes.
Or even an election management body or an election system that's not fully developed. So, of course, it's prone to manipulation by various quarters, not necessarily all of them being government-sponsored
Not
manipulations. Not necessarily. So you'll hear
Everybody has
issues.
their piece of the pie in that
Everybody
particular
dips
body.
their hand in this thing. So it's not necessarily that it's a government that is manipulating or stealing an election. It's everybody.
Actually,
Yeah, or
we
yes,
are
or it
growing.
could be
Ndu.
that a
Ndu.
government
Ndu.
is actually stealing an election,
Ndu.
and
Not
that,
alone.
but that also has to be taken into consideration that it happens very, very many times, and these narratives were not spun
it's
from
not
the
even
air.
stealing an election. That to me is
to
not even,
remain president
is
of
not,
life,
no,
I believe
that
what
to
was
me
your
isn't
term.
even the issue. The issue begins at party levels. The shambles that plays out on the national arena begins at party levels. If you knew the amount of squabbles and why do you think these small fringe parties emerge? And there are many. They are clearly indicative of the dissatisfaction that people have with their own party election. They feel no. Believe me, what you see playing out in the national arena and why many of our politicians should not have a leg to stand on is because the same things are practiced in their own backyard.
Yep.
The very same things that people complain about at the national level is what you see happening in grassroots elections for political parties in the country.
Yeah.
If you read and if you bother to read the complaints that people have, oh my goodness, this happened. Whether it is Kenya, whether it's Uganda, whether it's Tanzania, DRC, that's an interesting kettle of fish.
Oh, I don't think we
Yeah,
even need to
they-
go there
they-
to try to
they-
decipher
that's,
exactly what is going on with internal and external pressures, and still, of course, being considered still under major serious economic colonization. That's a whole, like you said, a whole other story that getting into to try and understand the intricacies of what's happening in DRC at the moment. Again, another story. But we cannot ignore the fact that even if it is in what is supposed to be a people-led, people-driven, people-centered society, when you have these edicts coming out, there are factions or groups of people.
It's a people-elected government and
There
a
you go,
people-elected
and
president.
the people
Talking
feel
to the people who elected him.
democratically
yes,
elected.
democratically, and the same people feel that they are being stifled at some point. It's something that cannot be ignored.
When people disagree with you and they happen to be in government, the word stifling tends to come out a lot quicker
Yes.
than the word disagreement,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, of course.
Just because you have what you said, I disagree with. It doesn't mean that I'm stifling what you're saying.
No, but
just say it.
But the person
also-
is in authority, is in a position of authority and governance over you. That is a distinct difference, Eric.
It's 13 minutes to 9 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. Good morning.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So the phone lines are now open. Do you agree with Nduako's perspective that there's an sort of an emergence of strong arm tactics by regional leaders and governments when they have, issuing some certain edicts that will eventually end up fomenting dissent in their countries? Do you agree with that? What I find interesting is the way we are discussing Tanzania now in the same basket as the other governments around. So for a long time, Tanzania has been a quiet country.
Silent government.
We've had presidents who come in and they're amiable and they're very good. And then we have John Pombe Magufuli who says no. The way we've been going, we're heading in the wrong direction. Things are getting out of hand and we need to bring things back on track. And I see him doing that a lot. When he goes out there and he says, there's a project, what you're talking about, task force, rapid results initiative. There's a project that was supposed to have happened here. A bridge was supposed to have been constructed.
Where's the bridge?
Where's the bridge? Who's the contractor? Stand up. Where's the provincial commissioner? Stand up. Where's the minister? Stand up. Now tell me. Start with UPC. Oh, Mheshimiwa Rais, sit down. You,
go home.
Minister, tell me. You, contractor. Now we are going to surcharge you. Make things move. And it's because he's coming from that point, I feel, that he's coming from a point where he's feeling frustrated. And the only way to show people that things need to move is by showing them publicly, not sitting down in a boardroom somewhere and calling the contractor.
That's different.
And then
when
coming out to say,
different.
we have had conversations.
That's different. And I would be in
How is it
agreement.
different?
I would be in agreement with that, whereby you say, for things to be done, look, go ahead. People have not been doing their job, sitting around picking their noses instead of getting things done. Absolutely. Stand up, give your explanation. You're not able to give explanation, go and sit down. But then again, for somebody to report on a story, for example, and by virtue of the fact that they're reporting with external information, with local information, whatever it is that they use to put their story together as journalists do, and by virtue of that fact, you don't want them to speak at all. We're not talking about progression for the country economically or getting infrastructure projects back on ground. These are totally different things. And I would say, yes, for example, people are not doing their job. Come on, stand up and go and sit down. Basically, I would say the same thing. But then for people if you're reporting on what's happening in the country and suddenly it would appear to be dissent, then you want individuals to keep quiet.
Or
that
it
I have
appears
a problem
like you're spreading false news or fake news. And it's going to influence the
One of the
public.
largest proponents of fake news in the world has talked about fake news, and it was clear that he didn't want this news coming out because it was an attack on his character, as opposed to what he was doing for government. Those are two totally different things.
Did you say attack on his character?
Yeah, from what he saw it,
you do need to attack something which exists. Huh?
According to him, according to him, he said all this fake news they're coming up because they're attacking me, as opposed to look at the work that we're doing. He too was able to draw this divide and say, look at the work we're doing. Look how we've made America great again. But they've created fake news to take away from the integrity of these projects that we're working on. You see,
if you're talking about America, I'm going to bring this issue down to Kenya. You see, when we were talking earlier on about development and change, the police service had a leader. Was he Inspector General or was he General Ali?
He was commissioner.
he was commissioner for police.
Yes. General Ali, he's one of these unsung heroes in the country. But the thing that man did for the police force, all these stories about making sure police have good dwellings, happened in his time. Making sure that what is now happening, what the DCI is doing, what these people are doing now, it began then. This fight against Mungiki and making sure the Mungiki menace more or less came to a halt, it was during his time. A lot of changes took place. He's not a man who liked publicity, clearly. He's not a man who made many speeches, hardly ever. In fact, hardly ever seen even. But this is what happens now. He has a military background. Okay? Paratrooper to be precise. Now, that discipline that he had in the armed forces, when it was brought to the police force, one saw very many changes within a very short time.
Yep.
Very, very short time. Now, we don't need to give examples. We have very many examples in this country right now of people who are actually doing what they're supposed to do. Okay? So, when we go to your topic of what it is that the journalists are being accused of, please remember, if it is one journalist, ask yourself, how many other journalists in that country have criticized the government? What has happened to them?
Nothing.
So you would ask, what in particular has this particular journalist done that has made him be focused on?
I don't think it is one journalist in Tanzania, but otherwise it wouldn't be.
Okay,
it
make
wouldn't
it
be
10.
It wouldn't be the case
No,
that has been looked
make
at globally.
it 10 for purpose of discussion.
Yes, and it's 10 out
And
of
it
how
is-
many?
No,
Yes.
it is those ones who've been bold enough to actually open their mouth loudly and say something. And if you want to look at it, that's the case. It has been the case that those have been bold enough to actually open their mouth and criticize the government of the day. And we cannot run away from that fact. That is what it has been.
I'm actually
Those
not-
who have gotten in trouble are the ones who've been bold enough.
You know,
That's the thing.
You know, this fight, I brought in General into the discussion. We've had this fight against drugs and corruption and what have you. There was a time a whole haul of drugs was found in Malindi. And if you follow the reports, the police had known about it for the longest time. They're just observing to determine who is involved, who isn't, who is doing what. They didn't hurry to arrest people. When they arrested, they knew this fellow is a small cog. This is what he does. This is a small cog. This is what he does. They knew. Now, where politics now comes in is perhaps to interfere with who should be prosecuted and who should not.
Right.
That's where the problem now arises.
And
okay?
protecting the integrity of the
Yes.
of the evidence.
Precisely. Now, journalists cannot hide behind journalistic privilege if it isn't clear that what they're doing falls within the ambit of what the responsibility that goes with the freedom. Remember, this freedom has responsibilities also.
Of course.
It's
but
not
you
just
also
blanket
find-
freedom
Sure.
where you can just do what you see fit.
There's
Yes.
a caller online. This is Zachary calling from Nakuru. Good morning, Zachary.
Morning, Zachary.
Oh, morning, guys. Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I'm happy to again talk to you. Now, this is the point that I want to make.
Yes.
They say that absolute power makes dictators,
Corrupts absolutely.
Corrupts
yes.
absolutely.
definitely. But then I want to say again that absolute freedom makes brats. Now, look here, guys. I want to be very brief. Look at somebody like, allow me to use the current guy that we have, Miguna. I have been actually reading his posts, and he's posting on network on the online.
Yep.
Basically, one thing that such guy lacks, is respect for authority. Okay, regardless of whatever he has been denied, but he has no regard for authority. Look at the language that he is using against those people in his power, okay, or in government.
Yeah.
When you abuse my president, when you abuse my MCA, you are directly abusing me. Okay,
The people who elected them.
definitely. So, despite that we are going to fight for our rights, okay, I would just say that we should know that freedom has responsibilities.
Yeah.
We have to have. If you want to be free, we have to be responsible, okay? And the essence of government is to place order in any community or society, okay? And I'm happy.
Good
now,
point.
there's this lady who has made Kenya her home. I do.
Yes.
Let me address her, please, briefly. I like Nigerians because I like Nigerians. But there's this one thing that I saw, okay? Over Christmas. And I've been traumatized, actually. There is this viral video of a lady from Nigeria who was charming a small girl, yeah? I don't know whether she saw it.
Did you see that video?
Who was doing what now?
There was this viral video from Nigeria of a woman slamming a very little girl. She just slammed her down.
Slamming.
There was.
How do we know it was from
How do we know
Nigeria?
it was from Nigeria? Because there were there's quite a number of videos that have come around from Africa.
Yeah, did you see that?
No.
No.
I did not.
What I'm asking is, Zachary, how do we know it was from Nigeria?
No, it was from Nigeria. I talked to some people, my friends in Nigeria. Yeah?
And they told you they saw it. And they saw the woman.
Yeah, it was
Okay,
from
so
Nigeria.
what
Okay, so the point is-
You found
what's the
something
question?
disturbing, yes?
The point is, yeah. Do please, can you follow up? And okay, and there was this also other video that the woman has been arrested. She was paraded, and the girl was rescued. But can you, on my behalf and on behalf of all others who love children, yeah,
Follow up the story.
let her for and please update us, yeah.
Okay.
for sure, I didn't enjoy my Christmas because of that video. And
Pole
I
sana,
tried,
Zachary.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zachary. You'll do that. You'll find out if there's any such video and find out the stories from your networks within Nigeria or West Africa in general, and find out if such a story actually did happen. You can give us an update in days to come.
Right.
Yep. So, but basically, Zachary was saying, this is the same thing that CT was saying. Freedom does not mean that you have absolute freedom.
There are responsibilities that go with that freedom.
Comes with responsibilities.
Yes.
And of course, then you need to also know the boundaries of your freedom. So if you don't if you don't get to that point of boundaries of your freedoms, then you'll find yourself in trouble occasionally, once or twice. And I think also it's motions that the media in Tanzania is going through, and it's the same thing that we are saying about politicians in Uganda. You have got to push back. You've got to fight for it. So I see them fighting. It's a natural process, and I think it's also a healthy process. He is a president who is completely, resolute on what he wants to do and focused. This is what I want to do. I want to move Tanzania from this point to the next point.
Right, and I think at the same time, he's also anti any kind of criticism whatsoever. And clear.
Which leader welcomes criticism all the time?
Yeah, no, but it's very
on this
clear.
continent?
Yeah,
Which
that's
one?
okay, but it's very clear. I mean, look at here in Kenya, the President Uhuru Kenyatta welcomes criticism. Whether he welcomes it or doesn't, he doesn't say don't talk. He manages it very well, and he doesn't say don't speak about it. He doesn't say don't criticize me. He just says and he knows how to answer it very well,
and joke about it.
And he's able to fan it off of himself and still remain focused in terms of what he wants to do.
But you know why that is so?
And it can't be ignored that it cannot be ignored that the individuals who are coming up with this are bold enough to say something about it.
Let's continue the conversation for a bit in the next hour. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We'd like to know what's happening on the roads, and Nduoko will be taking a look at that. Of course, you can tweet her if you have anything that is emerging wherever you are right now, at Spice FM KE, at Nduoko, that's NDUOKOH. Coming up to 9 o'clock, good morning.
Up your life.
Yes, because of some of the showers that we've seen in Nairobi this morning, that has definitely affected traffic. A faulty truck has been blocking one lane on the southern bypass in Kikuyu, and we still have that situation on the road right now, and people are not able to move as best they would. Looking at Mombasa Road, and what is not moving is a lot of traffic, that's for sure. Right after the General Motors, and coming from the container depot, that definitely is affecting traffic. Then outbound, trying to cut short your trip on the superhighway might not be the best right now because it is traffic all the way. Thika Road parts where it's under construction is giving us some problems. Let's see what it looks like, but for now definitely still the remnants of traffic hour. Looking around the country also, Mombasa, the traffic has staved off and we don't have much to report from there. Let us know if anything we can report on. 0719 012-600. Send us a tweet and so we can share the information of what's going on where you are.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
And the conversation continues at 2 minutes past 9 o'clock. The phone lines are still open, 0719-012-600. Taking a look at regional politics and how governments in the region are behaving towards their own people. Of course, Nduoko is taking issue with this, the kind of dealings that some of these governments are doing. Arresting of journalists in Tanzania, curtailing meetings and political expression in Uganda. The same kind of thing we are seeing in regions, in governments around the region, Burundi as well, of course, DRC. Those ones we're not even discussing into detail.
We can't even go into that because it's a whole kettle. I mean,
but if
you look at what's happening in Uganda now, for example, right now I think Museveni is on day 5 of his 6-day jungle walk. Look at Besigye. Besigye decided he was going to take a walk in Kampala a few years ago. He was arrested for walking. He was arrested for opening his mouth to speak. He was let out of jail, sent to court. Immediately coming out of court, he was arrested again, just because of the fact that he wanted, according to him, he wanted people to know what was happening in terms of knowledge, because of course people then would be served with the notion that it's possible to have somebody else ruling Uganda apart from Museveni. And this is something that he did not want to be put in the ears of Ugandans at all, even till today.
The country recently mourned one Charles Rubia. This man was a minister at some point. The first African mayor of Nairobi. He wasn't just some small fry. He was a serious man, okay? He was detained. He wasn't the only one detained. The person who seemed to have taken the cup for detention was the Right Honorable Raila Odinga.
Yeah.
The only person who seemed to be detained longer than him was somebody called Wasonga Sijeyo. Okay? His father's friend and an MP and someone who was in the Kenya People's Union. Koigi Wamwere, jailed. Ngugi wa Thiong'o, jailed, detained in fact. I think that's more the question, not even jailed. Now, all these people at some point left jail, left detention. Others got into politics. Others got into their life. But if you look at, I'm giving the example of Raila Odinga right now. This is a man who seemed to have spent most of his adult life crusading. But he is now in a very serious position of power.
Right.
It has been a lifelong quest. Magufuli will be opposed, if not by journalists, by other people. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of the job he has gotten himself into. And it's a thankless job by and large. Leadership is not a job where people thank you. Leadership is where people criticize you. Even those who subscribe to the Bible and think of some of the greatest leaders who led marches from one country to another. Moses, that man had it rough.
He did.
You have a bunch of people who have seen miracles, and the next thing you know, they're making idols.
And you've told them you're going to speak to God.
Yes, the
And
apostles
you've
brought them
actually
out.
seen the revelation of such manifested.
And you've
in
seen
the physical.
the hand
You've
of
seen
the
it
Spirit.
manifested in
Yes,
the physical,
yes.
but still you go against
Precisely. Now, we're talking about a supreme almighty being here, okay? Now, you are a mortal and you just happen to be president. It's your first time being president. You actually think that you're going to go about your business and people are not going to tell you, excuse me, this isn't happening this way.
So what I
will
hear
be
you
told.
saying, CT, is that for a lot of these, if you give the example of Museveni, he came into power, taking on the remnants of a previous administration that maybe just that did not fuel for the people what it was supposed to have done for Uganda. So then he came in, and I think then he realized, okay, here we are, I'm in this position, maybe going through the trenches like Magufuli does right now in Tanzania. But the chap seems to have stayed in this stance for a very long time. He doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
He knows how to go about his business. That's why. Today you're his friend, tomorrow you're his enemy. So what? The next day you can be his friend again.
A renowned South African singer came into Uganda the other day to perform a New Year's festival, to perform at this festival. She is known to be a supporter of Bobby Wine.
What did she think?
Before she, as a supporter of him.
Yes, and what did she expect?
Before she was able to perform, she was deported. That was a message loud and clear.
We deport musicians from this country every other day.
Yes.
And not that they support anyway. You just slap and kick
one
of your singers out.
Is there any kind of political leaning with these singers that are deported in country?
There's a reason I mentioned Raila. If you want to take a certain position, whether you want to fight for people's rights or you think you want to be president, please expect that this is not a job that allows you to sleep easy at night. It's not made that way. There will be difficulties. Now, How well you do depends on your staying power, your focus, and how you can make your foes your friends foes. Whatever, how you can play around with this whole concept of friendships and enemies. That's what people do. For the longest time, the one thing President Moi was really good at doing was precisely that. You never remained an enemy for life. You disagree today, the next day you're good friends.
Do you see Museveni and Bobby Wine, for example, being friends and being able to
Yes.
share
Yes.
in the near future?
The other day we discussed
Yes.
Bobby Wine at length.
yes, we did.
And my conspiracy theory was he's being groomed
By Museveni?
by Museveni himself. You've got to throw that iron through the fire so it hardens. This is it.
It
It's
looks,
not gonna be easy.
Yeah, of course, it sounds
It's
very
not gonna be
flowery
easy.
to say that it's okay, go through the trenches so that you can come out standing as the general for later, as a footsman right now, and you'll be fine in the future. But it seems like a pretty high price to pay for what we are seeing now. The same could have been said of Kizzy Besigye. And then he seems to have been forgotten.
What
along
were the
the line
reasons for the
when
Biafran
Bobby Wine
War?
came through?
What were the reasons for the Biafran War?
Well, the Igbos of a particular Igbos wanted their own country
Why did they want their own country?
because they felt they could rule better and do things better for themselves. That was it.
Or they felt the government in
The
place
government was not
wasn't
working
doing
for
what
them.
What
they
they
felt.
wanted.
Exactly. I give that example because people will dissent for all sorts of reasons. Okay? And you may not agree with them.
But it is important to look at the reasons for dissent, especially when you're looking in a country that is supposed to be cohesive and when you're trying to get towards economic freedoms and economic development. It is important to look at the reasons why there would be any kind of dissent. That goes without saying, absolutely. People are standing up, then you need to look at that. When you look at the BBI and what was able to bring about, there was dissent that was rife in the country, Kenya, that we're talking about. The BBI came to bring a lot of bring in cohesion where there was none, bring in peace where there was none, and it was necessary for that to be looked at. That doesn't mean that any run-of-the-mill, anybody who stands up today to say I'm dissenting will be listened to.
Yeah.
But then there's certain things that are you had half the country basically saying no. And it was important for that to be brought in. What I'm saying is that when it comes to such things need to be paid attention to, and they cannot be ignored.
Don't ignore them as well. And also don't ignore if any people are also supporting the president. If, for example, today we were saying that a certain huge percentage of people in Tanzania, for example, were up against what President Magufuli was doing, then we'd be saying that, well, yeah, the president needs to listen to the people. But if the president is coming and saying, you know what, Tanzania, we have lost our way, we have lost our track, this is who we are as a people, and the way we've been behaving lately is not in line with who we are as a people. If the people agree with him and they say, yes, we support you, Mr. President, crack down on those elements that are not going by how we are as a people, by our ethos, then those people who are not going against the ethos will obviously
complain. But we've not seen that.
But
we've not seen that, unfortunately.
We have not seen what you are calling fermentation of dissent in terms of Tanzania. People coming out to say, no, we don't like what Magufuli is doing.
I've made it very clear as the reason. You must understand also the kind of people that you are dealing with when you see that dissent or when you see that expression of such would come out. Again,
we cannot reduce the people of Tanzania to say that when they look at dissent.
But when you look at the people of Kenya compared to the people of Tanzania, you know for a fact they are people who are not going to speak up the way Kenyans would.
No, they
for
do
example.
speak up.
No,
they do speak up. They speak up and do.
They don't speak up in the way that Kenyans would, for example. CT here gave the example a few minutes ago of how if you took the Kenyan media and put it in Tanzania, for example, or even put it in Uganda, the way in which things are expressed here, it would not happen.
But it's against a background of
and
evolution.
The same way, if you took the people here of Tanzania and put them in Kenya, for example, and some of the things that are being expressed to them, they would take it sitting down.
Are you saying they're timid?
No, I didn't. You said that.
I didn't say that.
No.
What are you saying?
I am saying that in terms of expressing
they
themselves,
don't express themselves. They don't
they
know how
would
to
not
speak.
express themselves in the manner in which Kenyans
How would they express
That's what I'm
themselves?
saying. I'm saying definitely in terms
whatever
of
way are they going to be able to express themselves in whatever manner.
They wouldn't come out. They wouldn't come out and
going
speak because of the way they have been socialized over time. They are not the ones to be more overtly expressive about opinions that they have. That is very true.
So
and a Tanzanian will tell you that.
That is who they are.
That is who they are.
So when one
and
or two
you
people start
suffice
being
to say
different,
that leaders understand the psyche of the people when they come into leadership. That goes without saying.
City, you want to make a point here?
What I was going to say is that, remember, the evolutionary process, say, of the media in this country went along with the evolution of the political class. And the their increased capacity for tolerance, because you had a situation where many people who previously had been in some form of opposition in the country, some of them ended up in government. And some of them who are now in government were also in the opposition at some point or the other. The president was the leader of the opposition at some point or the other. So that evolutionary process becomes important and is necessary, because people have sat at different times in the history of their political life. They have sat in different positions. And then there's the understanding that the media is also useful to any presidency or any political power. It's not just an enemy. Now, there are countries where they seem to feel that the media is always an enemy. And so they react and they treat them as enemies. I am saying it is an evolutionary process, and Tanzania is going through theirs.
And it's going to take some time. At some point, the people of Tanzania will be able to see that they can open their mouths and speak.
They do open their mouths.
They do speak.
And they do speak, as do the Ugandans, as do the Rwandese, as do the Burundians, as well, DRC is a bit big.
The Sudanese.
Ethiopians. They do speak.
They do speak. Expression is not necessarily that they pour out onto the streets and or pick up arms or picket, but they do actually express themselves. This conversation continues on our social media platforms, as always. Spice FM KE, Facebook, on Twitter at Spice FM KE via the hashtag The Situation Room. And also remember, we are live streaming the show on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this morning is C.T. Muga, Eric Latif, and Nduoko. It's 13 minutes after 6. Good morning. 13 minutes after 9 a.m. Hey,
You're
6.
taking us back. Repressive
All right.
policies. Do you see yourself now? Even you've adopted.
The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So Nairobi does not have a governor who can access office. Nairobi does not have a deputy governor who can run the affairs of the county government of Nairobi in the absence of a governor. But we know that the governor of Nairobi has nominated somebody to be the deputy governor. But we also know that this has been debated about. And we know that today the county government of Nairobi is going to be meeting. The county assembly of Nairobi has been summoned by the Speaker, Beatrice Elachi, to come and meet and discuss the issue of leadership within the county government of Nairobi. Now, today, if you look at the way the kind of discussions have been going around, is that vultures are circling. And because about 30 members of the County Assembly of Nairobi have said that they are supporting a bid to oust the governor of Nairobi via impeachment. So some of them are saying that we'd like to impeach the Nairobi governor, and they are being supported, of course, by the former leader of the majority in the Nairobi County Assembly, that's Abdi Guyo, who says, yes, I support. All I'd like to see is Sonko out. And now they're starting to work closely with his erstwhile rival, the Speaker of the County Assembly of the Nairobi, Beatrice Elachi. Now, looking at what's going to happen this afternoon, of course, they're going to be discussing this and saying, how do we make sure that the county executive functions well and is able to report to us when we need reporting done by the county executive of Nairobi to the County Assembly? What is it we need to do? Do we need to form a committee that ensures that there's a smooth transition and smooth process of working? Or is there going to be a sneaking of a motion of impeachment by some MCAs onto the floor of the County Assembly? I think the likelihood is of this happening is, if it doesn't happen today, it's going to happen in a coming days. The governor of Nairobi, Mike Mbuvi Sonko, is going to get impeached by MCAs of Nairobi. There may not be many today, but they will gather the numbers. There may be 30 who have said that they are supporting this, but out of over 100 MCAs, very shortly, we shall have more than 70 MCAs actually saying, yes, we need to impeach the governor of Nairobi. And this is what I'm saying today. His days are numbered. So, yeah, we know he has tried to fight off this kind of moves. Of course, with his supporters within the county assembly itself saying we are not going to allow anybody to come and try and impeach our beloved governor. We have seen MCAs also saying that they've received threats from goons who have called and said, we dare you to support any kind of motion that goes against the governor of Nairobi. We dare you. You're going to see Chamte Makuni. We saw this happening in Kiambu the other day. Of course, the issue that's going to be taken to the Senate is whether there was a proper constitution of the assembly on the day, whether there was a sufficient quorum to even vote on the impeachment, whether the two-thirds threshold was arrived at in the county assembly of Kiambu. In Nairobi, however, the kind of things that we're seeing, the kind of battles that we saw between Beatrice Elachi and Abdi Guyo has over time managed to gather the numbers behind him, people who support him. Beatrice Elachi this time is just sitting there. She's not coming out strongly to say, I support the governor. There are people who are saying that they now could work even together with Abdi Guyo to speak with one voice and say, well, this is it. Push has come to shove. Let's see him out.
Many of these senators, the people who now hold the office of senator, if I'm to go by the political trajectory that seems to be followed in this country, will at one time want to become governors. It is not going to be possible for them to set in motion a precedent that could harm them when they become governor, or if their quest to become governor is realized. If Sonko is impeached, it therefore means we have a precedent. If he's out of office for all these years, it means the law has been followed to the letter, and anyone from this point onwards, all these governors who have cases, all can expect to face the same thing because there'll be a precedent. And if I am looking at the manner and the gusto with which Kenyans like to self-preserve and to look after their own selfish interest, especially when they're politicians. Senators ensuring that they are the ones who actually set in motion something that would harm them, should they ever send that seat. I do not see it happening.
But this starts at the assembly. Even before it goes to the Senate, if the assembly does everything right, so if the assembly, for example, convened and they had the requisite numbers that they require, and they passed a motion of impeachment, the Senate has no option but to discuss
If
that.
we have a situation where our politicians are completely immune to financial influence, which completely immune,
Which will happen when pigs
born-again
fly.
immunity, then yes, indeed, what you're saying is not only likely it will happen, but since I have not seen any evidence that points to what I've just mentioned, it's also very unlikely that that will happen.
It's unfortunate that we have to then go back to this because, I mean, it goes without saying that, yes, if the palms are greased, then perhaps that is the direction in which we're going to go. But right now, the protection of a future possible position overrides doing things right, as it were. However you're going to define what right would be. And now that's the thing. If somebody comes and puts money in somebody's palm, it doesn't mean anything. Secondly, if I see a position whereby, if I see a situation where a possible position for me in the future would be targeted or would be at risk, then I am going to do everything I can to protect it.
You know, the Senate has already actually gone through an impeachment motion before. In the case of Embu, where they sat and they agreed with the county assembly of Embu that, yes, you guys have impeached your governor. We have our hands are tied. We have listened to the case that was brought before the assembly, the debate that went through there. It makes sense. Yes, the governor is impeached. Of course, the governor went now to the courts and the courts protected him. But we've seen that. And it doesn't mean that the Senate cannot go through the motions. It will do the work that it's supposed to do. The work it's supposed to do is just debate it when it has been brought. Now, the issue that we've raised is a strong one because it's a likely one where MCAs are, let's say, influenced financially not to appear in the assembly on the day of voting, or to ensure that even if they appear, they don't vote for impeachment. Now, That's the biggest threat that I see to a natural motion of impeachment. But in terms of whether it's possible to marshal the numbers, I think it's possible to marshal the numbers in the Nairobi County Assembly to get an impeachment. I think it's also possible to get the support or the silent support of the party itself. Remember, this person has been taken to court in this government. Jubilee is the one in power. This is a Jubilee governor in the capital of Nairobi. Remember, we discussed this before. Could it mean that, even the people, the higher ups in the party have said, well, really, you guy,
Eric, that would hold water if the divisions within Jubilee were not as obvious as
rife as they are.
Then that, yes, we would say, the party seems tired of him. That isn't so. The problem with, what I see in our country, every time there's an issue of this nature, what you've done is just increase the going rate for ensuring that somebody serves well in your corner. It's not that justice will be done. If you are facing impeachment, all that it spells out is that if you require assistance, yes, people will be mobilized, but mobilized for what purpose? The mobilization is that I have X number of people who are very likely to do you in. Now, can we speak?
Can we speak?
Yes.
It's a negotiation.
Yes, it is a negotiation. That has been the trend. Now, I'm saying if this unlikely scenario actually does come to fruition, where you have a situation where people actually do what they're supposed to do, then yes, indeed, he'll be impeached. I was about to say peached. That's a totally different thing.
That too.
Yes. But given the way our politicians think, given the aspirations that they all have, given this need and this drive to a higher political office so that they themselves can also be involved in this very same thing that is troubling the governor of Nairobi. They all want to plunder. They all want to be in there doing deals and doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't see the need for justice overriding this perspective that they have of what they would do if they were in that position.
You don't trust their integrity. That's the bottom line.
You need to trust something which
exists.
Is
there. It's interesting to note, I think just a few months ago, just before all this whole fiasco began, or rather maybe in the throes of the fiasco, we had a Nairobi senator-led group who came forward with a very large document about the fact that, there was a vacuum of power in Nairobi and they didn't like the way in which things were operating. And it was senators with members of parliament as well as MCAs, 60-strong group or so was it. And so this could point in the direction that maybe now, being given the opportunity, they will do whatever needs to be done to make sure that now that vacuum is complete and it can be filled within somebody who was serious about the job, as it were.
And this is why I started.
So I think it looks like there could be a situation that would arise where they could actually move him out, because from the very beginning they expressed concern over the fact that they were not happy with the way in which he was operating. And this was a mixed group of people, from MCAs to MPs to senators. Right.
This is why I started by saying the vultures are circling, right? They have seen this thing is about to die, or it's actually in the last throes of life. It's dying. And what's the best thing to do? It's just circle so that you can be well positioned to eat the meat. This is what is happening. It's a political game. If you look at it and you can see this man is embattled from very many fronts. He is not getting any kind of support, the support that you would expect that this kind of person would attract in terms of politically. So he's out, has cases to answer, he was the kind of drama with which he was arrested. It shows you that he has been abandoned by some quarters. So he is prime to be kicked out. The county assembly had initially said that we are expecting direction from the Jubilee Party headquarters so we can see what direction to take. The Jubilee Party headquarters has not come out to say, you know what, this is how we'd like. In fact, let's call in the meeting of the MCAs of Jubilee within Nairobi and sit down and discuss now in the absence of your governor. This is how we suppose that you go about, the business of the country, of the government of Nairobi. Jubilee has been quiet, silent on this matter. This is where everybody who wants to take advantage actually gathers. And Abdi Guyo is gathering the numbers as we speak. He is gathering the numbers to actually see, finally, this guy is out of office.
Because they've not been satisfied with the way in which things have been
run.
For
many other reasons, of course.
Yeah, so it could be that, one, they're not satisfied with the way in which things have been run. Two, it presents a beautiful opportunity for somebody to step in to take the position that they've been eyeing all along, or grooming ground for somebody else, preparing the way, as it were, for the Messiah of Nairobi to then come through, whomever that is.
We're having this discussion wrongfully presuming that the person who's being charged, the person whose neck is on the block, is just sitting and watching all these activities
he's
take
definitely
place.
doing his what is filibustering. He's definitely doing his part of it
he
as well.
would be. He already has a strong legal team, and I'm sure he has strategists who have thought of every which way that they can get out of this, and they have planned scenarios. You cannot be governor of Nairobi and not be wily enough to understand how it is you can get out of such a jam.
True. Even when he was sitting as governor, he still had his advisors, senior people, even in the legal profession. He had people who could sit down and tell him, this is how you avoid any kind of fight coming from the assembly, right? But this is a point of weakness, and that's what it is. This strong man is currently exposed. How do we strike? And I'm seeing some MCAs, this is the opportunity that they're, even not just MCAs, even their supporters from outside the assembly, this is an opportunity that they'll take advantage of and say, let's go for him now. Let's try and push this as hard as we can. We don't have a governor. We have grounds now. We don't have a governor in office. This governor is facing charges, and then bring up all the other issues that they may have about him and how he has run the country executive.
The only office in this country that seems to have the means to actually curtail the governor's power is the office of the DPP. Because they have the prosecutorial powers, and they are the ones who, when they have sufficient evidence, are actually in a position to bring the courts to bear on this gentleman heavily. Now, they may not. He doesn't need to impeach him. No, if there are legal instruments that would essentially render him non-functional as a governor, then the powers that we speak of will have been curtailed significantly.
Well, I think from what we saw in the headlines today, I think that is the direction in which the DPP actually is going, because he says, look, we're going further with this thing, and we're going to ask that bail be revoked in this case.
That's the office.
This shows you that the DPP does not have the powers by himself.
He doesn't. But he said to himself, he has to go to court.
He has to go to court, and he says he intends to go to court.
And the judges in court so far have not actually rendered an opinion that shows that this person
the judges
needs to get out. So
Justice Ngugi's judgment had some clarity. Court of Appeal, man, they obfuscated
they went round it. Yes, they went round it. And then, of course, we saw the Senate as well coming up with its own
brand of opinion.
Opinion on the same side.
Remember, this is a gentleman who was part of that Senate.
The people, I'm answering when you're saying that the person who has the power to actually remove the governor or curtail his powers would be the DPP. No, the people with the power, their county assembly. They have a constitutional power to actually get the governor out of office.
The reason why I mentioned the DPP is you are talking about a group of politicians, a cabal of politicians, who by their very nature, the fact that the politician tells you they're ambitious, they're not content to be just ordinary citizens going about their lives. Yes, then when you throw in interest, and when you talk about the cost of interest in, say, a party that's in power and which currently we seem to see is quite divided, genuinely divided. This is not play acting here. They seem to be at odds with each other. The cost of doing business in such a scenario has gone up significantly.
And I put it to you, City, that the governor of Nairobi has many enemies within and without the government. Those enemies could also mobilize the same kind of funds that you're talking about. They can also mobilize funds, and they can also get MCAs on their side with those kind of funds to ensure that this motion actually happens, materializes, it's debated, and the governor is out. They can ensure that those same resources are deployed to the Senate.
There's an interesting scenario that
remember cartels.
I understand perfectly.
Let's take a look at traffic, and then we come back and you give your interesting scenario. It's 9:30. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to
Naivasha Road that connects with Ngong Road, unfortunately filled with potholes. Going to set you back about 30 minutes in terms of traffic today, because that is the result of a bad road, unfortunately, in dire need of first aid, as is Thika Road, as well as some other areas in the city. So that's causing some traffic coming out of there. Nyayo Bunyala, Haile Selassie moving exceptionally well right around now. And that should continue that way for some time. Coming off Langata Road and Ngong Road, out then towards Bagathi Way and the City Mortuary roundabout. Not so bad this morning. So we're getting to the hour where traffic has basically staved off. It's been not too terrible a morning as far as traffic has been concerned, though Mombasa Road and of course the Eastern Bypass right now are still quite clogged. Let's see what it looks like in a short while. But for now, that has been your Thursday morning traffic, and hope it gets better as the day goes along.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
28 minutes to 10 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga and Nduoko this morning. We're talking about Nairobi County government and how it's operating. We know there's no governor. Well, the governor is still in office, but he cannot access office. We don't have a deputy governor. The County Assembly of Nairobi will be meeting this afternoon to discuss the critical issue of how to run the county executive of Nairobi. And there's some 30 or so MCAs who have indicated their willingness to support a motion of impeaching the governor of Nairobi, Mike Mbuvi Sonko. I'm saying the vultures are circling, the vandals are at the gate, the enemy is right here, people are aligning themselves. The days for Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko are numbered because an impeachment motion will come and it will get support.
You see, you seem to be of the view that the fight lies within Jubilee, and if his Jubilee supporters do not want him, then he's in some fairly hot waters. And I'm saying Jubilee aren't the only party who have MCAs within the Nairobi County Assembly. And the fact that there's a disagreement within Jubilee doesn't mean that other parties represented in that assembly will fall into that disagreement. No. Remember, our politicians are by and large business people. And this is a business opportunity. And I'm looking at it as that. It is a business opportunity. And people have an opportunity to do some good business and make some good money. This opportunity here. It's not a
this
question
opportunity being the vacuum.
This opportunity being the problem that the governor is in
right now.
And the fight that he has.
For sure.
And because he's not giving up.
He wants
He's
to
exposed, he's limping, and this is where the hyenas are seeing.
This
is a limping piece of meat. Let's jump.
This man has been in far more precarious positions when he had even less power. He was taken to jail. He was just a simple citizen. Somebody who can escape Alcatraz as in Shimulatewa. This is not an escape artist. This is someone you take seriously.
It's not Houdini.
No, you take this man seriously. He was a simple person then. He is now a governor. I'm not thinking about his position. I'm thinking about the way this man thinks and the way he goes about his business. Such a person will have seen the escape route long before anybody else has seen it.
It doesn't mean that because he has seen it, he's going to succeed.
Oh, it doesn't mean he's going to fail, Eric.
The same way that his opponents are also wily. He's not the only wily politician in this city. His opponents are also wily.
Eric,
his opponents are not only politicians, even the same people that he's been calling cartels, the business people. There are very many business interests that would sit there and think, this man has been such a thorn in the flesh. We've been wondering what to do about him. Now, here we are. If all those people joined ranks and closed ranks and said, well, the people who are disgruntled in business, the people who are disgruntled in politics, the MCAs who are already disgruntled, those that can be brought in via some financial influence, if all those people, all those interests converged, Mike Mbuvi Sonko and his army will not be able to fight back. They cannot push back.
Actually, Eric, let me just say this. You couldn't be further from the truth. Let me give again. Today, I mean, there are two people whose examples I'm going to keep giving. I've talked about Nuruddin Haji. I'm going to talk about Raila Odinga again. How many times did people say, no, this man is finished now? This time.
Yeah, quite a number.
Gone.
This
Done.
Finished.
And what happened? The man
bounced back stronger.
Not just stronger. Infinitely stronger until you wonder, how on earth? Now, if you look at someone like Sonko follows that every time you think, this guy has overstretched it, he's going to be in trouble. It started off, He wasn't given the time of day to be an MP. He was an MP. And where was he MP?
In Nairobi County.
Precisely. Does he come from Nairobi? Not really. The next thing he wanted to be senator. He said, this guy, senator. Wow, okay. He was senator. Governor. Now, some people laughed themselves until they had belly aches. Governor. This guy with a bling.
No way.
He's
And
governor.
it happened overwhelmingly.
He is a governor. No, actually,
The
in
vote
ter-
was
in terms of
overwhelming.
votes,
Yeah.
outside the president, Raila Odinga, he was third. The only other person who came close to him after that was Sabina Chege. Well, I'm actually telling you the truth. These are people who got such overwhelming votes, you wondered, God, really genuinely popular. Now, I don't underestimate such people. Because even as you say he was working against some cartels, there were some cartels he was working with.
There are those that supported him, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So even in carteldom, okay,
There's
there's
division.
division. So it isn't as though it's just one group of people who are solidly against him. And cartels are business people. If they arrive at an understanding that is suitable to them, and he's still the governor, why on earth would they want a new person whom they don't understand? They'll say, it's okay, carry on. These are business disagreements. They're not political disagreements. And even if there are political disagreements in this country, money solves these problems in such a way that it's almost miraculous.
So you're saying money is the only thing that's actually going to work here?
Somebody can be
No.
crying today, the world is
Right.
over. Put some money in their palm. I'm telling you,
The
the
thinking
resurrection that
changes,
will take place.
The world looks different
conscious
and they all
res-
feel
the
different.
world is
conscious,
renewed.
somebody doesn't talk, is not able to even open their mouths. Let the presence of money
Actually,
appear.
I wouldn't-
resurrection, conscious resurrection takes place.
If you say money, it sounds crass.
But it's money now.
It is money, but it isn't just the money. It's the restorative powers of that enablement.
What you're now then able to do,
Yes.
because of
we
its-
have witnessed impeachment motions in several counties, right? Let's just go to the latest one in Kiambu. So in Kiambu, of course, there's that whole issue of money comes up again. How many MCAs were actually in the assembly on the day? How many were conveniently out
Not
of the
there.
country? How many were in Nakuru
If
for
we're
some
looking
meeting?
if we look at the numbers, there weren't enough numbers to actually impeach him.
There you go. But then there were good numbers who are in the assembly.
Yes, there
All
were.
they needed is to ensure that we do not have quorum.
That's it.
Quorum, right?
That's it.
So we have seen it happen. We've seen, in some cases where that convenience comes and works. We have also seen where MCAs have overwhelmingly voted to impeach a governor more than once in Embu. More than once. And despite or in spite of the kind of work and the pushback that the governor had, he did not stop that vote. Not once, not twice. He did not stop the vote. It's the same thing could happen here in Nairobi as well.
Yes, but the deciding factor is not the assembly. They are the one, they don't kick him out, do they?
the Senate is the one who would essentially kick him out.
No, but it starts with the assembly. The Senate
I-
cannot.
I agree.
The Senate
Sure.
cannot do anything.
The
until
matter is
assembly-
taken from the assembly
The
to the
assembly
Senate.
must pass that motion.
Yes.
And I'm saying the assembly, this time, the assembly is going to pass an impeachment motion against Mike.
Actually,
Whether it's
then-
going to be, 75% plus one vote, it's going to happen.
Eric, let me draw up a picture for you. You are in this assembly, and they would understand the governor better than we can speculate here on the little information that we have. And I was someone in the assembly. How would I be thinking of my fighting to throw this man out if it wasn't just negotiation? And then the guy comes bouncing back, and now he's now governor.
Coming even stronger.
How do you think my life is going to be?
Yeah, you look at it from both ways.
Yes.
Do we have the numbers? Actually, let's get more numbers. Let's get him out for real. Because when we were working with him as governor, when he was functioning in office, what did I get? What did I get from him? How did we relate? If people feel that, we didn't have good relations with the governor, he's out. He's gone. He's a wounded man right now. I keep saying the vultures are circling, the hyenas are gathering, the vandals are whatever. But this time he's exposed, and this is one move. They only have one move, and this is it. And I think they're going to get the numbers.
So are you saying that frustration that we had seen coming out, bubbling over, is going to carry the day?
Yes.
In terms of, so all they're asking is that the assembly hand them this thing on
It's
a
the
platter, and
opportunity
they're
now.
going to get on the chopping block and take it off.
This is it.
Because that's what we're saying, that now, according to you, the frustration that they have seen before, this vacuum that they saw, they really do care for the city of Nairobi, and they say, look, we want to see something that's happening, that's developing properly, and it's not happening under the leadership that we have today. And they still are of that same sentiment. And what they're saying is, now, Assembly, just do your job. Just do what you need to do to allow us, then execute. 100 strong. 100 strong MCAs in Nairobi.
How many of them are Jubilee? How many of them are the other parties?
Are we looking at an even split?
You know now Jubilee and ODM are like one, eh?
No.
They work together.
Not when it comes
It's
to
one
this
party.
thing.
It's one
They work
party
together.
assembly.
When it comes to it,
Eric, this thing just got more expensive. It's not a question of working together.
so it's not about the party either.
You see,
It's
it makes
individuals.
it easier for Sonko if, as you say, Jubilee is having problems. Because some of the MPs, the assembly
MCS,
members will not have a problem with Sonko. Believe me, when it comes to these party things, they will go and discuss and tell the party leader, look, we actually don't have a problem with this guy. There's nothing he's doing that. It doesn't interfere with the BBI, whatever you're doing. We actually like him. After all, at some point, he was one of us anyway, before he moved off to do it. The political discussions that take place, Eric, from my perspective, is that no party leader in his right mind is going to stand in the way of his membership gaining. Because that if you don't let them gain, then you'd better have an alternative plan for them. And this, business deals don't get better than the one that we have in front of us. You look at an impeachment. I'm looking at a business plan that is waiting to be implemented.
Right. And then, of
And
course,
it could go either way. That's what I'm telling you. It could
I am
go
saying
either way. It doesn't mean that only the party that is facing this problem has the money or the capital to expense.
No. It isn't that. But again, how many governors have faced this? Makwini governor faced something similar. Taita Taveta faced something similar.
Yes.
Embu faced something similar.
Taita Taveta, actually, they impeached him.
Yes, they did. And where is he? Is he still governor? Yes.
Yes, he is.
Senate went and reversed.
Senate went and reversed
But the point is, the assembly.
I'm trying to say, let me perhaps make my argument
The assembly
clearer.
was not bought. The assembly was the man.
At what?
It was not bought
The
to
assembly
support.
was not bought.
Maybe it was bought to oppose, but the thing is, there was a vote of impeachment.
Eric, the governor, Samboja, cannot be compared to Sonko. No. These are two different political animals. Completely different. They're working in politics, the way they go about their business, completely different. If I was the governor of some rural constituency or some rural county, because that's what Taita Taveta, it's a rural county. You cannot compare that with the county of Nairobi, no matter how much you want to stretch your imagination. And just the politics around it. The politics in Nairobi affect the national government here. Whatever happens in that assembly affects the national government. It's not... Something in Taita Taveta will affect Taita Taveta, really. It doesn't affect the rest of the country. Unfortunately, what happens here affects the rest of the country here.
Yes.
So, when I call it a big game, I mean precisely that. It doesn't get bigger. The only thing that's bigger is the presidency. So, if you think about it, you are talking about cartels. Then there's the body of governors who also know what they have done and what they stand to lose if this gentleman gets impeached. So you are talking about cartels. I'm talking about the body of brother governors who know, this man's case.
Those brother governors, remember, when the man was arrested and taken to court, those brother governors released a statement. And they said, we want to call the president so we can sit, because Nairobi is a very important, seat of power. We want to call the president so we can sit as a summit and discuss how best Nairobi can be governed. They did not come out in support of their brother. The only time they did that is yesterday, or the day before yesterday, when they came out in support and said, we support the Nairobi governor for nominating a deputy. He has exercised his constitutional mandate.
Eric, I think
That's the kind of support, political support in terms of saying he should stay in office, he should access office.
No.
They have kept off.
I haven't said anything about that. Yeah.
No, they haven't. But what I'm saying is that I think they acted very responsibly. If this thing is a matter that's going to court, you are the governor. When you say you want to meet with the president, do we know what else I wanted to discuss with the governor? They might, for all we know, say, look, this guy is one of us, and this is how we support him. If they said something to the contrary, it would appear that the governors were now fighting the government directly.
Yes.
Now remember,
and it's not the first time. It's not the first time. The
around
governors
that
have
same
done that.
time, the counties were eagerly waiting for the government to disperse funds to the
They
various
all rallied
counties.
together.
Yes.
They were not going to rock that boat.
And around that time, the governors were actually talking so tough against the national
The
government.
national government.
Talking about how the national government
in
is
relation to
stifling
the
development.
money,
In relation to the money.
that they
Yes.
wanted individually as
So
governors.
this could have been a perfect weapon to use as
No.
well, and come out and say, you know what, this national government, look at what the national government is doing. It's fighting devolution, it's killing devolution, arresting our governor in the manner in which our governor has been arrested is wrong. They could have come out and said all those things. In
Eric.
fact, not even talk about whether it's right or wrong to charge a governor, just talk about the treatment of a governor. They could have done that. They did not. They steered clear of that and said Nairobi is such a central county in this country that we'd like to call the president to call a summit so we can sit down and discuss.
I actually don't know personally, of any county in this country that the Anti-Corruption Commission have not visited, the Auditor General has not visited, and who have not been given an adverse report. They all have, in one way or the other. We call it budget queries, call it audit queries, but they've been visited. Now, the findings, they and the Auditor General and the Anti-Corruption Commission are the ones who know. If they seem to be soft peddling, they know why they're soft peddling.
Right.
These are all politicians, by the way. And for them to be governor, it means they're fairly serious politicians. They are not going to push an agenda that doesn't serve their interest. They did not speak against him. They didn't speak about the court of law or anything. They said, we need to come and talk and see how Nairobi can be governed. You cannot get more oblique than that. And I will not even bother reading into it.
Yeah.
Except that it is oblique, and that was their way of saying, we need to talk about these things.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it was an opportunity for them now to talk about their own troubles, because they all have troubles.
Exactly. So it's not directly supporting this man. If it means we hang him so that we can get our troubles to disappear, we will hang him. Throwing him under the bus, they'll throw him under the bus.
And we must understand also at the same time, when I think at some point after this group of, the mixed group of senators, MPs and MCAs came together to speak against this, what was the response that the Nairobi governor gave?
He called them cartels.
He said actually that they were actually supporting the cartels, giving rise to the fact that there is, of course, allegation that a lot of them actually run some of these cartels. So it's clear that it's one side pitted against the other. And you obviously have it that there will be a faction that is in support of him because, yes, they want to get rid of the cartels, but then there's also a faction that will be against him because they want to protect their own interests.
Politicians like Sonko don't come around every day.
Let me open the phone lines so we can just see pick one or two calls. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. The County Assembly of Nairobi will be meeting today to discuss the affairs of the county government of Nairobi. It's actually a special sitting. There are some 30 or so MCAs who have so far come out to say that they'd like to see an impeachment motion against the governor brought to the fore. Do you think it's going to work? Do you think it may flop? Good morning.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi
County Assembly, who said, my interest as it currently stands is to make sure that Governor Mike Sonko goes home. And if the Speaker is of the same opinion, then we will bury the hatchet and focus on the goal at hand. This is, as it appeared, that the two are actually now starting to work together. The Governor is out of office. Now the Speaker, Beatrice Elachi, has received some letter from the Governor nominating an MCA. She has said, I'm not going to take action on this first. I'm not even calling the MCA so we can come and discuss this. See what she's done. She's not saying come because I have received a letter nominating a deputy governor. She's saying come so we can discuss how we can run this county government of Nairobi. Then Abdi Guyo, who's her erstwhile rival, says, you know what, I want this guy out. If we can come together, if we can form any sort of agreement and we are thinking on the same page, We can gather the numbers. If she supports us bringing tabling a motion in the assembly, if I can get the numbers, we shall get this thing moving. And I'm saying this is where opportunists will jump in. Many of them who are enemies of Mike Mbuvi Sonko will find ways of trying to influence or penetrating the Assembly of Nairobi and ensuring that a motion comes through and a motion goes.
Well, of course, we can't deny the fact that that motion definitely has some character, in the sense that they will be able to get some numbers out there. Because, yes, there was quite a lot of frustration. The frustration that we saw coming out of people when they talked about this, that not happening in Nairobi, also went as far as the leadership level. It went to that point where MCAs were complaining, senators were complaining, members of parliament were complaining about the Nairobi that had lost its glory. Then, of course, combined with, the allegations of corruption and the allegations of all kinds of nepotism that were essentially taking place. Now, again, it would be interesting to note that those who would want him to stay, not necessarily want him to stay because he's a nice fellow, but of course, their personal interests, again, are at stake. Their own interests are at stake. So him staying is not because they support him, it's essentially because they support themselves. So, I mean, it's going to play out quite interesting.
It's a competition of interests.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like we said, he's not taking it sitting down either. Of course, I'm sure. Just the way you have this lobbying from one side, definitely you have lobbying from his side, whether it's silent or not. He's talking to people. He's having these connections made. There was a big move, of course, by him when he made this pronouncement of who would be the DG according to his nomination. That was not just something that came out of the woodwork. It was planned and it was executed properly. So, it would be interesting to see. But I think very important that Beatrice Elachi did not talk about, removing him per se, or talking about the nomination of the DG. But essentially, let's solve this Nairobi problem. We have a problem in Nairobi. That is what we need to solve. And the solution of that would probably have other things that came along with it again, like now the impeachment of Sonko himself. Yep.
One of the things, they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The proof of the politician, in many ways, is how they deal with adversity. And if you look at the politicians that we have right now, who make national headlines, whether you like them or you don't, but you will notice a certain thread. There are people who've bucked the odds. The things that you thought could be done, they've ended up doing it. So they stand out.
Right, and here's a fellow who has this standing against him. He's got the state standing against him in terms of this court case. He's got very much standing against him, even after he's been able to, buck the tide, as it were.
The issue of procurement matters and what have you, there is no, as I said, I don't know of any governor who doesn't have those issues in this country. Call it audit queries, call it whatever. So his problems are clearly political, in addition to this one here. Now, it appears that clearly there are people who would not want him there. But this is Kenya, this is politics, these are political issues, all are subject to negotiation. All. There's nothing that cannot be negotiated into or out of, not in this situation. And let's take this scenario that Eric has taken, that people actually think they're going to get. You think this is the sort of guy you take out and there will be no fight?
No, of course he's not going down without a fight.
There's going to be a fight.
There's definitely going to be a fight. And I think this is the thing. They're rearing up for that, and they're being prepared. And they're being prepared for the fight that is coming to them, come what may. And now that's the thing. Once the more numbers you have, it's been said that, of course, the fight then is made easier for you. And I think that's what we see happening right now. People are trying to rack up the numbers.
So even in the assembly, so the Tanga guys are likely to support him, right? The Kieleweke guys may jump ship. If we say that the ODM, the minority whip, and the others are already among those ones who are saying, bring the motion, we're supporting the motion. So there are some elements within the opposition as well who say, bring the motion, we are going to. So it's not even about parties. It's about individuals and where their national affiliations are, right? And then it goes
where their self-interests are.
Self-interest and national affiliation. There are those who will go into there and saying, us as Tanga, we are not going to ensure to allow this vote to come. Or there are those who will say, us as Kieleweke, from the way, if I vote this way, then my interests politically and nationally will be affected. So I've got to protect my political interests nationally by saying, if I support this motion, how does it portray me to the
How does it play out for me? Yes.
Yeah, the higher ups, how does it work for me? Those would be the national interests, but pegged on national politics of the day. So those things are going to have a lot of moving parts playing. But I am seeing this is an opportunity that's presented to enemies of Mike Mbuvi Sonko. They will take it, they will clutch at it, and they will make sure that they mobilize the numbers. I am seeing, even if it plays out like it did in Kiambu the other day, where the motion goes through, then let's be debating whether we had the numbers or not, whether the numbers were, we had sufficient quorum or we didn't have sufficient quorum, whether we had sufficient grounds or not. But there will be something that comes out of the County Assembly of Nairobi saying the County Assembly of Nairobi has impeached its governor, Mike Mbuvi Sonko. Whether it's legit, whether it's not legit, that will be another discussion altogether. It will be a political statement to be made. That's what I'm saying.
Well, definitely something is going to happen. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of today in terms of decisions that will be made, because I also think that they see that this needs to be dealt with some kind of expediency and say, okay, look, here, again, opportunity has presented itself on the chopping block. Here, we need to do something about this. And of course, you have that side that says, yes, we need to do something about it, to do what we can now to make sure this fellow never comes back, or the converse. I think today, at the end of today, we'll be seeing some major movements in terms of what's going to happen for Nairobi, in terms of how it will be to be governed and what will happen to the current governor.
We'll wait and see, and see how it unfolds. Of course, we know that the Assembly will be meeting today. They'll be meeting this afternoon. They'll be discussing what the Speaker, Beatrice Elachi, has said is matters to do with... They'll be deliberating on county matters which are not limited to the leadership crisis. Not limited to the leadership crisis. Basically just saying, come guys, we have a leadership crisis in the Nairobi government. Let's discuss this. Let's see how it comes out. There are those that are seeing it as an opportunity, including the former majority leader, Abdi Guyo, and others. 30 of them so far apparently have said we will support any kind of impeachment motion. Let's see how many signatures have been gathered, whether they'll be able to sneak in a motion in today's sittings or in future sittings. We'll see.
You know, we're listening to the music and we even think we know what the dance style is going to be for this particular song. Watch the styles change as we move along.
As we move along.
It'll be changing.
Oh, my goodness. It'll begin with a twist. The next thing they'll be doing a jig. The next thing they'll be doing something you've never even seen before.
How much money do you think will
change
go
hands?
around?
This sort of exercise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Estimates? 100 million?
Yeah. Yes, thereabout.
100 million?
Thereabout.
That's kidogo. That's about $1 million per person.
It's just 2 dams.
Remember, a million in hand is worth a lot.
Oh, true. Well, let's have this conversation continue tomorrow, of course, once we see what happens today, this afternoon in the County Assembly of Nairobi. Thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room, the Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We had C.T. Muga and Nduoko. This evening from 7 to 10, of course, you'll be joined by the adults in the room. That's Eric, Emmanuel, and Barbara Mbaka. That's the Duchess of Ikolomani. They'll be here to talk about issues on social, on family, on society. And then before that will be the Spice Drive with Monique. She'll be here to take you home. A number of things that she'll be doing. Between now and then, you have uninterrupted music. We call this Spice Soul from now until 3 o'clock. Good morning, it's 10 a.m.